On today's show from the Michigan Supreme Court, Justice Richard Bernstein. Justice, welcome back.
Hey, Bart, I gotta tell you, I want to check out the Jackson Coffee Company in that town bar. That place is sound great. I want to tell you something. I want to check out any place that has live entertainment. How do you not love that? On a Friday night after a long week, like, isn't it fun just to go to, like, hear some good music? I gotta check this place out.
You're gonna have to come back to downtown Jackson.
Seriously. No, but I gotta check this place, and I gotta tell you, the food, everything here. I gotta go to these two places. I'm seriously, I am totally gonna check these places out because they sound amazing, and I am very excited.
I think it'd make headlines. Michigan Supreme Court Justice visits the town bar.
I'm going. I'm gonna tell you something. Totally going. And you know what though? But you know what's really important about this is that it shows why we have to be back in person. Am I right? Mm-hmm. This is a mission that I am on. We have got to get everything back in person. This is, Bart, I can't tell you how important this is. We have got to get businesses have to be back in person. Work has to be back in person. Courts have to be back in person. We have got to get people back in person. And like I say, I know it gets people all worked up, but I believe this so strongly. You know, with the exception of this wonderful program, people have got to get off Zoom, get off the Zoom, and get in person. And it's time to take off the masks. It's time to get off Zoom, and it's time to rip off the masks. And I got to tell you something, now more than ever, we have got, Bart, this is something I'm so passionate about. We have got to be in person. We've got to do it. We can do Zoom, basically when necessary, when appropriate. But our default for all business, for all work, for everything has to be in person at all times. And if an accommodation needs to be made where a person needs to go on Zoom as an accommodation, we can do that. But it should be the default, should be in person for all activities, always. We have got to get back into the world. We have to start living again. And I got to tell you something. We got to get to Jackson Coffee Company. We got to get people to, start populating downtown Jackson. Why don't we make this our mission? How about this? Anyone watching today, let's join the movement, right? Come to downtown Jackson. Come to a restaurant. Come to a coffee shop. If you're a business, ask your people to come back into work. Let's really focus on really filling downtown Jackson with life, energy, and people. And let's focus on getting people excited about living again.
All right, we're all in agreement.
Can we make that happen?
I think so.
Do you think the people that are watching today, are they going to come out and make this happen? Are they going to get here to downtown Jackson? Are they going to come to all these businesses? Everyone is open for business, but people have got to be in person. Let's make this our movement.
Yes, our viewers are very responsive. They do what we ask them to do.
Cool. Well, Bart, here's the thing. Let's ask them right now. In person is critical. So the big request that we're making is that for anything and everything you're doing, please do it in person. It's very, very important.
In fact, just this past week, you had some judges ask the Supreme Court to get off Zoom.
Yes.
Judge Asadorian in Oakland County said that video hearings have decimated courtroom decorum and respect.
They're absolutely right. They're absolutely right. And in fact, I'm proud to say that Justice David Viviano and myself, we actually co-authored an op-ed piece that ran in the Detroit News. Justice Viviano and myself have been fighting this forever. We want all court proceedings to be in person. This is something that we have been incredibly passionate about, that we want court in person. Court cannot be done virtually. It is just not designed for it. It's not what it's meant to be. Because here's the thing, Bart. Let me put it this way. And this is why Justice Viviano and myself are so incredibly passionate about this topic. Because it's easy to phrase it this way, right? It's your day in court, right? This is your big moment. This is your day. You have waited for years for your day in court, whether it's civil or criminal. This is your moment. This is your time. Do you want your day in court to be on Zoom?
No.
Do you want your day on court to be on a computer? Let me ask you a question. Think about our nation's history. Think about some of the greatest arguments that have ever taken place, right? Those arguments that happen in the hallowed halls of justice. Think about it. All those great things that we think back to. Inherit the Wind, right? Think about Clarence Darrow. Think about the great arguments of our time. Should they have been made on Zoom? Think about a young person asking themselves, do I want to be a lawyer? Do you think they're going to want to become an attorney to make that impassioned argument on Zoom? Virtual court has to stop, and it has to stop now.
All right. No more Zoom. No more Zoom.
No more Zoom.
No more Zoom.
I will say this. If you're doing a status conference or, something of like low significance, right, where it's nothing of consequence, right, like a status conference, it should be the discretion of the trial judge or the district court judge to use Zoom. But this is the key. Are you ready for the key thing, Bart? This is what Justice Viviano and myself are fighting so hard about, is that basically what we're fighting is that it should be the discretion of the local judge, right? If a local judge wants to do a status conference on Zoom, then that's the discretion of the lower judge, if that's what they want to do. If the district court judge says, okay, I want to do this on Zoom. If the trial court judge says, okay, I want to do this on Zoom. This limited thing, right? That you can leave it to the discretion of the district court judge or trial court judge in that capacity. But what should not happen is that Lansing, under no circumstances or situation, should be governing and telling the lower courts that they have to do things on Zoom. That's what the fight's over, is this notion that Lansing, the Supreme Court, feels that we have to dictate to the lower courts the fact that they should be on Zoom as much as possible. That's unacceptable. It is not Lansing's place. It is not the Michigan Supreme Court's place to tell lower judges or lower court judges, district court judges or trial court judges, that they have to be on Zoom as much as possible. That's not our place to tell the trial court or district court that they have to be on Zoom as much as possible. I want the trial court judges and the district court judges to do everything in person, but if they want to do a status conference on Zoom, that's to their discretion. But it's not the Supreme Court business to tell them how they should do their jobs. We are very passionate about this. And I got to tell you something. We are going to fight this until the end. And we're not going to let them enact these new rules that are going to take discretion away from the district courts and trial court judges.
All right, local judges will be happy to hear that. Now, we've got 2 or 3 things I know our viewers would be interested in hearing your thoughts about. First, though, I do have to mention that this morning Governor Whitmer sued to take the case of Michigan's abortion law to the Supreme Court. We can't talk about that. I just have to make a point, mention obviously it's making national news that the governor has done this.
Right? There's a lot going on, right?
But we can't talk about that because this could and will. It will eventually end up in the Supreme Court. So can't talk about it. But what we can talk about...
Bart, you gotta admit, it's a lot happening, right?
It's a
lot happening. It's never a dull moment, is there?
Well, first,
we gotta get. But the thing is, there's never a dull moment. But it'll be more exciting if people come to downtown Jackson and and start populating these businesses and start doing stuff in person the way we're meant to.
That's right. And hopefully, we're at the end of the pandemic and things are going to get back to that normalcy. Today, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is going to be confirmed by the Senate, and then presided by our nation's first Black woman, Asian vice president to become the first Black woman Supreme Court justice. It's a pretty momentous occasion in our country's history, isn't it?
Well, absolutely, but I think that's why diversity matters, right? When you have a multi-court panel, whether it's the U.S. Supreme Court or the Michigan Supreme Court, it's very important that you have people with different life experiences, with different perspectives. That's why diversity counts, is because when you're sitting around a table discussing an issue or discussing a case, you want different perspectives. life is about experiences. That's how we form who we are. And the more experiences you have that are part of a conversation, the more you're going to have justice.
The process of bringing a new justice to the court
Right.
is so politicized, more so now than ever in our history, isn't it?
Well, I think that's the case, but I think that's, in many situations, that's what the founders intended, right? I mean, if you're talking about a lifetime appointment, I think that's fine for people to scrutinize your background and basically, the Constitution's pretty clear, advice and consent from the Senate, right? And ultimately, I think if you're gonna have a lifetime appointment, I think you can handle having to go through a few days of testimony and having to go through that. I happen to like the way the states do it, because what I like about how Michigan does it is our Supreme Court is elected. And I think that's actually a far better process, because when you have elected judges, it requires you to go into the community. It requires you to spend time with people. It requires you to go and hear the challenges and hardships and difficulties that people are having to contend with each and every day. So I'm a huge proponent of the way Michigan does it, where if you want to serve on our state Supreme Court, you've got to get elected, and that means you've got to go and spend time with people, hear what they have to say, converse with them, and have an understanding and appreciation for challenges and difficulties that real people are having to contend with.
How about the process? And you listen to the grilling that both Judge Brown Jackson and Justice Kavanaugh went through in these proceedings by the Judiciary Committee. It was pretty brutal.
It is, but you know what though? Can I just say something? That's politics, right? Welcome to the NFL, okay? If you want a lifetime appointment, right? All right, you gotta go, so you're gonna have to take some hard questions. You're gonna have to explain. I mean, that's just the way life is, right? If you wanna have a great job for the rest of your life, I don't think 2 or 3 days of having to face some challenge or difficulty and having to answer some hard questions is a really big deal. I mean, candidly, like I say, for the Michigan Supreme Court, we run every 8 years. I happen to love it. I mean, I happen to love answering hard questions and spending time with people and having a chance to get to know people. I mean, honestly, you know what? These jobs, these are not entitlements. These are things you have to earn. And you know what? If you want to be in a position where you're making decisions that are going to impact the lives of countless numbers of people, then go out and get it. Right? Go out and earn it. Go out and do something and make sure that, the people have the right. I happen to like the electoral process better, because you're really having to interact with, people that are going through difficulties or challenges. And it allows for you to have like a better understanding and appreciation of the issues that people have to face each day, who basically you're making decisions and determinations that are going to affect their overall lives. So election, or confirmation, I don't think there's any issue with making people have to go out and earn it.
Comes with the territory.
Sure does. No one's forcing you to, can I just say something? No one's forcing you to take the job. You know what? No one's forcing you to take it. If it's a job that you want, then go out and earn it.
Last week, Washington Post, CBS News unearthed some texting messages that the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, Ginny Thomas, had sent to Mark Meadows when he was White House Chief of Staff. Should the spouses of Supreme Court justices be involved in politics that might impact issues that the Supreme Court itself might have to deal with?
Sure. Well, I can't get into, of course, that specific issue for obvious reasons, so I can't talk about that specifically. But talking about just generally, right? We're not talking about that issue anymore. We're talking about just in general, right? I think that in a general context, in a general way, a general manner, I always think that the most important thing, if you're going to be a judge, is you have to avoid even the appearance of being biased, right? People have to have respect for the system, and they have to look at the system as something, the highest compliment that you can give to a judge. You know what it is? If you want to compliment a judge, do you know what the highest form of praise that a judge can get is? Is if you say to a judge, "Judge, you're very fair. Your Honor, you're fair." That's the highest form of praise, is to tell a judge that he or she is fair. That's the essence of it. And so you have to do everything you can to maintain that sense of fairness. And people have to see the judiciary as a ref, right? You know, the biggest challenge that, you know, I remember, like when I became a judge, I've now been a judge for about 8 years. And I always tell people, and it's a great analogy, and all judges use it, but I think it's a really appropriate thing, is that the transition you have to go from is going from being a player on the field, right? Where you're on the field and you're in the game and you're like really running on that field, right? You have to go from being a person who's part of the game to a person who's going to ref the game. And ultimately, the game is going to be successful based off of people feel that it's being played fairly. So anything that could denigrate or take away from the idea of fairness, I think, is an overall concern or problem for the judiciary. So I think that's really the thing I focus on, which is that people have to, no matter whatever their partisan is or whatever that circumstance is, for a judge, people have to look at this system as though it is fair. And you have to make sure as a judge that people see it as being fair, because otherwise they won't respect it.
There's really nothing, as far as, you know, standards of ethics and oversight for either Supreme Courts in Michigan, the state Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court. There's really not a lot in the Constitution that governs ethics and code of conduct, is there?
I think the founders were just really hoping that people that serve in this capacity or serve in this manner are people of character and people of distinction. At the end of the day, right, the government and the process only works if the people live up to the expectation, if they live up to the position, right? You can't govern for everything. And so sometimes you just have to have a belief in people and a hope that people will do what is right and what is just.
I want to talk about a couple of cases that you've been involved with here
Sure.
in Michigan.
Absolutely.
And since they've run the course
Yes.
of process, we can talk about them.
Yes, anything that's run the course of process is good to go.
The redistricting, there's been
Oh, yeah.
a number of cases,
Oh,
number
boy.
of issues.
You got to get excited about that part. I got to tell you, we might want to go over to Jackson Coffee. That this might be an issue for Jackson Coffee for us to go and hang out over there, because there is a lot to talk about when it comes to redistricting and to those cases.
So ultimately, has the process been fair, and, which I know was part of another lawsuit, has it been open? Has it been public enough that everyone has been able to see behind the curtain?
Well, as you know, I mean, in one of those cases that you're alluding to, I was part of a, I felt that and just to speak of it in this context, I think that everything, especially when you're dealing with something as it pertains to redistricting, should be open, right? And I was very strong on that issue, that basically if you're going to have meetings and you're going to do those types of things, that look, I mean, especially something as sensitive as redistricting, it needs to be open and transparent. It's just the way it is, and that's how government should usually be, right? It should be open and transparent, right? And so, I mean, I think the case that you're speaking of basically goes to that context, right? That if you're going to be making these kind of decisions, it's just the kind of thing that the public should hear these conversations and be aware of how these determinations and decisions were ultimately reached. And honestly, I am very proud to be on a court and part of a court that allowed for the process to be open. And I think by opening the process and making it so that it was totally transparent, I think that, if people have questions or concerns, they can get into that, but at least they're going to have an opportunity to know what was discussed and how decisions were ultimately reached. Agree or disagree with the decisions that were reached, but you should at least know how those decisions came about.
topic that everyone's concerned about is the war in Ukraine.
Right.
And I know that's concerning to you. We're hearing a couple phrases this week: genocide,
Right.
for the first time, and war crimes. People have been talking about for the last few weeks. People are curious: how are war crimes educated? What is the process? I mean, is there really such a thing as a penalty for war crimes? And is there a reality that is something that Putin could face charges for?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question. I think that when you get into this discussion, I mean, ultimately, I think just the concept of what is a war crime, right? I mean, basically, everyone agrees that war is, an injuriously awful thing, right? And that you're going to have, death and casualty, within war. And I think when people say what constitutes a war crime, ultimately, when you go to war, as awful as war is, there are rules that exist that basically govern the course of conduct. I mean, when you're dealing with, professional militaries and, professional soldiers and professional militaries like ours, which is a professional, operation that handles everything in a professional manner. That's why you have war colleges. That's why you have Annapolis. That's why you have, the Air Force Academy. That's why you have these places, is because, ultimately there is a system of governance that is put into place for disciplined militaries to function in a disciplined way, to ultimately do this in a correct manner and ultimately allow for freedom and liberty to be ultimately protected. The reason I'm giving such a long answer for this is that when we talk about what a war crime is a war crime is what ultimately the Russians are doing, where you're ultimately deliberately and intentionally conducting yourself in a manner where you are torturing civilians, where you are killing civilians, right? That's what constitutes a war crime, which is, it's the distinction of, when you're choosing targets, you're not choosing military targets, you're actually choosing civilians, and you're basically conducting your actions in a manner that basically is designed to torture and to kill basically innocent people who have no part of the conflict to start with. And I think what's also really important to point out about this entire issue is this entire thing is outrageous, because you have a peaceful country that basically is just a peaceful country that was a thriving, vibrant, democratic country that basically, think about it. Imagine if you were living there, right? You're living in Ukraine. You're just a peaceful, kind, warm, nice person. You're living your life. You're enjoying your life. Your country is thriving. Things are going well. And then you've done nothing. You're just existing and you're just living. And then Putin basically comes, destroys your entire way of life, kills your family, destroys your business for no reason, for no purpose. Sometimes you got to look at this in a very simplistic way. You have a wonderful, peaceful country who is just existing that for no reason basically gets invaded and attacked, and where you have horrific murder taking place by Putin's regime for no other reason than these people just existed as his neighbor. That's really what that is. It's the ultimate notion of just, it's pure evil. It's pure evil. Innocent people being killed and maimed for no other reason than they just exist and are living a life of freedom.
So it is. We all agree it's horrible.
Yes.
But at what point and how does someone...
I would argue that it would constitute a war crime.
Yeah.
I would argue. Now, in terms of, in terms of how do you go forward from there, right? I think at that point, we can have an academic discussion about what constitutes a war crime, but I think sometimes you have to look at things in a very pragmatic perspective, right? And if you're looking at something in a pragmatic perspective, then I think you just get into a might makes right argument, which is, ultimately, yeah, I mean, I think Putin will have to basically face ultimate judgment, and will be held accountable in eternity. But I think the real question is, while he's alive on this earth, how do you get him to face justice? And I think the real question then kind of gets to, well, what's the pragmatic way of allowing for that to happen?
All right, well, I'm sure there's brilliant minds working on it, we hope.
I'm enjoying this so much. I gotta tell you, hey, can I mention one quick thing before we leave? Because I want to get people excited, right? Can we end on an optimistic note?
Please.
Okay, so I am very excited about this. As you can see, I have my shirt, Michigan Sheriff's Association, and I am just so excited because I want to get the viewers excited, right? Ready to get excited? Okay, blue is back. Right? Blue is back, baby. And what I am incredibly excited about is I am working with Sheriff Swanson, who is one of the most wonderful people you're ever going to meet. He has energy and enthusiasm. He's the Genesee County Sheriff, and he has a passion and an energy and a spirit and a vitality that is like no other. He's one of those people who brings out the best in all people. And Sheriff Swanson and I are working with the Michigan Sheriff's Association to basically do what we're calling our Police Appreciation Tour. So, and I'm hoping that the people of Jackson will join our Police Appreciation Tour, which is we really want to start recognizing law enforcement for the incredible job that it does, for the sacrifices that they make, and for the difference that they bring to all of our lives. And I think that it is absolutely essential that we really focus, and I'm going to say it over and over again, we focus on the notion that blue is back. And you know what? We have got to let members of the law enforcement community know how important they are to us. And I would just ask the people of Jackson, when you see a police officer, or stop off at the station and just say, listen, thank you for your service. Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for the sacrifice that you make. And the reason that we are focused on our Police Appreciation Tour is because, listen, people that go into law enforcement could do anything else. They could choose any other job that they want to do. But people who go into law enforcement do it because they want to make a difference. They want to make life better for people. And they do it because they have a genuine love and concern for people. And they're doing it because they want to help people. And ultimately, when you go into law enforcement, they are making the biggest sacrifices. Because I don't know any other profession where when you wake up in the morning, the one thing that you're praying for as you say goodbye to your wife and family, or your husband and family, and you go out into the field, the one thing that law enforcement officers want, and the one thing that they pray for, is that they can come back to their families at the end of their shift, that they can return home safely. And that's what their families pray for, that's what their kids pray for, that's what their spouses pray for, is that their officer will come home to them at the end of the shift. And there's not too many types of people that are willing to make that kind of sacrifice, to go and face that kind of danger each and every day, but for the fact that they want to make a difference. And I think, you know what, Bart? I think it's really important that people express that appreciation and that gratitude to our men and women of law enforcement for the work that they do. Because I'm going to say this, we need more people to go into law enforcement. We need to help them with their recruiting. And we need people to see that if you choose law enforcement as a career, you are joining a legacy of nobility, and you're joining a legacy of making a difference and helping people who really need it.
Amen. I'm with you on that.
All right, we'll join the tour. We're going to go to the Jackson Coffee Company, and maybe we can kick it off there. I got to check this place out, but I really am excited about the live music. That's what I'm excited about.
You're going to love it.
I'm going.
It's always great to have you. Thank you for coming down.
Thank you. God bless you. And like I say, I love hanging out with you, and I love being in Jackson. But remember, we got to get the people to come downtown in person.
I love it when you're here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
God
bless.
Michigan Supreme Court Justice Richard Bernstein. Let's